Thea Stilton. MOUSEFORD Academy. The Secret Notebook. A Clue in Verse. It was a beautiful day at MOUSEFORD Academy. But instead of enjoying the sunshine, Violet was stuck indoors feeling sorry for herself. Achoo! She sneezed. Poor Violet was recovering from the flu. She had been in bed for several days, and although she was feeling better, she was tired of being sick. Her roommates, Nikki and Paulina, were staying in Colette and Pam's room until Violet got better. Ugh, I'm so bored! Violet exclaimed with a loud sigh. Even though her fever was gone, her friends had insisted that she stay in bed. One more day. Violet knew they were right, but she was itching to get back to the whirlwind of lessons and activities at MOUSEFORD Academy. In the meantime, she tried to come up with anti-boredom remedies. First, she made a list of every cheese she'd ever eaten. Then she organized her books alphabetically. She tried to read the fashion magazines that Colette had brought her, but they weren't very interesting. Then Violet started doodling on the magazine covers with a marker, which turned out to be fun. She was busy turning a supermodel into a clown when there was a knock on her door. Knock! 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 Come in! Violet called out, and Colette, Nikki, Pamela, and Paulina stepped inside. Together, the 5 friends called themselves the Thea sisters. Finally, you're here, she squeaked. What's the news? How was the first English class? What books is Professor Ratcliffe having us read this semester? Hey, slow down, Violet, Pam said. One question at a time. Violet took a deep breath. Sorry. I'm just so excited. You've got to tell me about English class. You know it's my favorite. Paulina smiled. Well, we're not reading any novels, she said. We're not? Violet asked, puzzled. Nikki shook her head. Nope. And no short stories either. And no plays, Colette added. Then what will we be reading? Violet asked, curious. Since you're my friend, I'll give you a CLUE, Pam replied. We'll read some that don't rhyme and others that do. Violet grinned. I get it now. We're going to study poetry. Exactly! Pam exclaimed, clapping her paws. How exciting, Violet replied, her eyes shining. I love poetry. Poetry fever. Violet returned to her classes the next day. During Professor Margaret Ratcliffe's class, she could barely contain her excitement as she read the list of all the poets they were going to study. My fever may be gone, she said to Colette when class was over, but I think I have another fever. Oh no, really? Colette asked. Violet grinned. Yes. Poetry fever. And Violet wasn't the only student who had been infected by the poetry bug. After a week of class, just about everyone was discussing their favorite poems and poets. In fact, Violet and her friends got into a heated discussion about their favorite poets one afternoon in the cafeteria. Pam spotted Professor Ratcliffe and called her over. Can you please give us your opinion? Pam asked. Of course, the professor replied. These mouselets are certain that Elizabeth Barrett Browning is the best poet, writer said. But they're wrong, added his friend Ron. No, you're wrong. She is the best poet. Ellie insisted enthusiastically. She writes about things that matter, like love and life. Colette nodded in agreement. Elizabeth Barrett Browning's words are so beautiful, she said, and then she began to recite one of her favorite poems. How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. I love thee to the depth and breadth and my soul can reach, height when feeling out of sight, Nikki sighed. Wow, that is beautiful. It's nice, but poems can make you feel powerful, too, Ron argued. Like the poems of Walt Whitman. Yes. Craig agreed enthusiastically. He jumped up on a chair and recited. Oh, Captain. My Captain. Our fearful trip is done. The ship has weathered every rack, the prize we sought is won. Everyone clapped for Craig except for Ruby Flashy Fur, who had been listening to the whole argument with a frown on her snout. I just don't get it, she said. It's all pretty boring to me. Professor Ratcliffe cleared her throat. I am happy to see that poetry is spurring such interesting discussions, she said with a smile. However, this isn't an argument that I can settle. Any poet who touches your soul is a good poet. Now, if you'll excuse me, my tea is getting cold. As the professor walked away, Tanya leaned in and whispered to her friends. I have an idea, she said mysteriously. Let's meet in the garden after class. Elizabeth Barrett Browning, 1806 to 1861, she was one of the most famous Victorian poets and was popular in England and the United States. Walt Whitman, 1819 to 1892. An American poet and journalist, his best-known work is the poetry collection Leaves of Grass. A poetry club? I wonder where she is, Pam mused. The last class of the day was over, and a group of mouselets was waiting in the garden for Tanya, the Thea sisters, Ruby and her friends, the Ruby crew, and Tanya's best friend, Ellie. I have better things to do than sit around here, Ruby complained impatiently. There she is! Ellie cried as Tanya ran toward them with a bulky bag slung over her shoulder. Sorry I'm late, Tanya apologized, catching her breath. What's in the bag? Ruby asked. Tanya grinned. I stopped at the Thrifty Rat and got us these. She gave a colorful notebook to each of her friends. Thanks, Nikki said. But what are they for? To write our poetry, Tanya announced. You mean, write our own poems? Violet asked a little nervously. Exactly, Tanya replied. I think we should form a poetry club. What, exactly, is a poetry club? Pam wanted to know. We can write our own poems and have poetry readings, she said, her blue eyes shining with excitement. And we can meet in the Lizard Lounge. Paulina clapped her paws together. I love that idea. We'll need to decorate the Lizard Lounge to fit the theme, Ellie suggested. We can add comfortable, colorful pillows, Paulina said. I love it, Colette said. And we could wear more poetic clothes and give ourselves poetic nicknames. I'd like to be Lady Colette. And we could eat poetic snacks, Pam added. Like tiny cheese sandwiches with the crusts cut off. Fabumouse! Nikki exclaimed. This will be fun. Maybe you think it's Fabumouse, but I don't. Ruby said, annoyed. Why not? Tanya asked. Poetry club, to-do list, decorate the clubhouse. Pick poetic nicknames. Wear inspiring clothing. Get poetic snacks. Because poetry makes me yawn. Ruby snapped. She turned to the Ruby crew. Let's go. We don't want to be in this boring club. She tossed her notebook on the ground and walked away, followed by her friends. If there were a club for rude mouselets, Ruby would definitely be its president. Pam exclaimed. Her friends shook their heads, laughing. That's Ruby for you, Paulina said. But that's okay. We can still have a poetry club without her. A secret meeting. The members of the brand new poetry club got busy right away. First, they decorated the lizard lounge with big pillows for the floor. They brought in flowers and electric candles to set the mood. That night, they got to work writing their poems. By the next afternoon, they were all ready for the first meeting. Each club member brought in an object to represent the poem she had created. "It looks beautiful in here," Tanya remarked, looking around. "A perfect setting for poetry readings." The other mouselets all agreed that the room was perfect. "So, should we start reading our poems?" Pam asked. "Not yet," Colette replied. "I think we should all reveal the nicknames we've chosen." "Good idea," Paulina agreed. "I'll go first. I'm inspired by beautiful colors. So I'm choosing the nickname Rainbow." "Love it," Nikki said. "And I'm writing poems about nature, so I'm going with the nickname River." "I would like to be called Melody," Violet chimed in. "Because I've been listening to music to inspire my writing." "I've been writing poetry when I look at the sea," Ellie said. "So I'd like to be called Sea Star." "That's a good one for you, Ellie," Tanya said. "I'd like to be Lilija, after my grandmother back in Russia. She read me poems when I was just a little museling." "What about you, Pam?" Nikki asked. "Will you be Pepperoni, because you love pizza so much?" "Ha, very funny," Pam replied. "But no. Where I come from, rap music is the best poetry. So you can call me Brooklyn." Tanya stood up. "Now that we've introduced ourselves," she began, "I, Lilia, declare the first meeting of the Poetry Club officially open." "I'll go first," Paulina offered. She sat in the big red chair that the mouselets had designated as their poem throne. Meanwhile, down the hall in the Gecko Lounge, Ryder was talking to the other Gecko Club members. "I think the Lizard Club is hiding something," he said. "I do, too," Shin agreed, adjusting his glasses as he spoke. "Did you notice how they were whispering to each other at lunch today?" Craig was working on his biceps, using a dictionary as a dumbbell. "What do you think they're up to?" "I'm not sure," Ron replied, "but I think I know where they are." I saw Tanya rushing into the Lizard Lounge just a few minutes ago. The four young rodents looked at one another. "Let's go find out what they're up to," Craig cried. Rhyme time. Orange makes my heart feel warm. Gray is like a coming storm. Purple makes me rock and roll. Colors sparkle in my soul. Paulina's friends clapped as she finished her poem. "Well done," Colette cheered. The other members of the poetry club took their turns. Tanya, Lilia, read a poem about a sled race. Then Lady Colette read a poem titled Love at First Sight, dedicated to a purse. After that, Pam, Brooklyn, started rapping about Gorgonzola pizza. The pizza poem made everyone hungry. So they broke for a snack. Then Ellie, Sea Star, read a poem about a coral reef. Nikki, River, followed with a beautiful poem about the sound of the wind blowing through tree branches. "Your turn, Melody," Nikki said to Violet as she got off the poem throne. Violet looked down at her paws. I didn't write anything yet," she said. "I just wasn't feeling any inspiration." Actually, Violet was afraid to tell her friends the truth. She was too shy to read her poem out loud. "Next time, then," Pam said, and then crash! The loud noise came from just outside their door. Tanya opened the door and found Ron, Craig, Ryder, and Shin standing there. "What are you doing here?" Tanya asked suspiciously. We were just looking at this painting," Ryder said innocently. "We love art, don't we, geckos?" The other members of the poetry club stepped into the hall. If you ask me, it looks like you were spying on us, Pam accused. Craig held up his paws. All right, we confess. We were curious about what you were up to. And now that we know you have a poetry club, we think it's a great idea, Ron added. In fact, if you don't mind, we'd like to form our own. I don't see why not, Tanya said. MOUSEFORD Academy could use more poets. Work in progress. The Gecko Club called their group the Rhyming Rats. They began having meetings, too. Soon, the Academy was buzzing about the two clubs. Professor Ratcliffe was very proud of her students, and that made one mouselet very jealous. Did you see how pleased Professor Ratcliffe is with the Thea sisters? Ruby complained to the Ruby crew after class. Yes, but Tanya did ask us to join the club, Zoe pointed out. Clubs are supposed to be fun, Ruby shot back. It's bad enough we have to do poetry in class. I don't love poetry either, but I do like the way they decorated the lizard lounge, Alicia said. Ruby's green eyes widened. Alicia had given her an idea. I know what to do. Ruby cried, and then she rushed off to her room, leaving her puzzled friends behind. Ruby hated to see other students getting more attention than she was. She called her mom on her cell phone. Hi, Mom, it's Ruby, she said. I was just wondering if you could help out with a little project here. The school's lizard lounge really needs a big renovation. Could you send your decorator out here right away? Rebecca Flashyfur never said no to her daughter. Ruby ended the call and grinned. The poetry club wouldn't be able to meet if they didn't have a clubhouse. The next day, the Thea sisters followed a trail of paint cans and brushes down the hall leading to the lizard lounge. When they got to the door, a rodent in work clothes held up his paw. Sorry, you can't come in, he said. Since when? Nikki asked. And who are you? I'm in charge of the renovation, he replied. Then he explained that the lizard lounge was going to be under construction for a while. The Thea sisters raced to the headmaster's office. When they arrived, they found him talking to Ruby and a stylish-looking mouse, her mom's interior decorator. Hello, students. Headmaster de Mousses greeted them. I have good news. Thanks to Ruby and the kindness of the Flashyfur family, you will have a brand new lizard lounge in a month or so. What a coincidence, Pam mumbled. But the headmaster looked so happy that the Thea sisters didn't want to complain. They left without voicing their suspicions about Ruby's motive. An unexpected find. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Paulina asked her friends in the hallway. Yes, Colette replied. With this renovation, Ruby is trying to end the poetry club. Right, but we have no proof, Nikki pointed out. Professor Ratcliffe walked up as they were talking. Do you know what's going on in the lizard lounge? She asked. Someone's making a big commotion there. It woke me up early. We woke up to a very unpleasant surprise, too, Pam said. Then she told the professor about the renovation. Now the poetry club has no clubhouse, Violet concluded sadly. The professor smiled. Well, earplugs will solve my problem. And I think I have a solution for yours. Follow me. Professor Ratcliffe led them to a small room near the library. You could turn this room into your new clubhouse, she said, opening the door. It's where we store books that we've taken off the library shelves. The poetry club members looked around the room. It was dusty and cobwebs hung from the ceiling. Shaky piles of books rose up from the floor. Well, it definitely has a literary atmosphere, Ellie said. But what about, the dust? Colette asked. A little dust can't stop us. Pam cried. This place just needs a good cleaning, Tanya said. Let's get to work. The mouselets quickly got busy. Ellie and Violet dusted and got rid of the spider webs. Tanya, Colette, and Paulina managed to get the colorful cushions back from the lizard lounge. Pam and Nikki came up with a creative way to use the piles of books as furniture. All done! Nikki exclaimed, admiring the room's new coffee table. Then she held up a small book bound in red leather. We found this in one of the piles. It looks like a diary. Violet took it from her and flipped through the pages. You're right. It was written 40 years ago by someone with the initials MR. Ooh, how mysterious, Colette said. All of the mouselets gathered around Violet, eager to see the diary. The vellowed pages smelled of forgotten secrets. Violet cleared her throat and began to read out loud. Our adventure begins. Dear Diary. What a day! Just think. Only yesterday, I was still at MOUSEFORD Academy, trying to close my stuffed suitcase. Today, I'm in Rome, Italy. How fabulous! We had a nice flight, but things got tricky when we got to the hotel. Charlotte, Deb, Pilar, Sunny, and I had booked 2 rooms to share, but only one was available. We were told that another student had demanded the room so that she and her friends could have a whole floor to themselves. Who would do such a thing and get away with it? Well, it turns out that Priscilla Poshpaws was the student, and her father owns the hotel. You should have seen how much luggage she had with her. Even more than Charlotte, and she never travels with less than 6 bags. So the 5 of us had to squeeze into one room. Luckily, Deb insisted that the concierge find us at least 2 extra cots. There is hardly any room to move around now, and our luggage is piled up everywhere, but the fun is doubled. That's all for now, diary. Tomorrow is the first day of summer session, and I want to look good. M.R. P.S. A new adventure is about to begin. Page after page. Violet closed the diary. Hey! Pam squeaked. We don't know what this summer session is all about. Why did you stop? Because we have dance class with Professor Ply in 5 minutes. Tanya cried, jumping up. Holy cheese! You're right. Pam exclaimed, slapping her forehead. This diary is so intriguing that we lost track of time. The mouselets dashed to the dance studio, but their thoughts were still in that new clubhouse. Who was the mysterious writer, MR? And what were a group of MOUSEFORD students doing in Rome for the summer? Before they entered dance class, Colette stopped her friends. Let's get back to the clubhouse this afternoon, she suggested. I am so curious to find out more about this diary writer and her Roman holiday. We can read more of the diary during our poetry club meeting. The others agreed that this was a good idea. They all met up again that afternoon, and over the next few days, they spent every free moment reading the diary. It was impossible not to get sucked into the story. The mouselets found out that the mysterious writer and her friends had traveled to Rome from MOUSEFORD to attend a summer school for talented writers. During that summer, each group of students had to create a magazine. The best one would win a prize from an international jury of judges. Unexpected help. Dear Diary. Never judge a book by its cover, and never judge a day by the morning. Charlotte, Sunny, Pilar, Deb, and I spent the morning on the balcony, trying to come up with an idea for our magazine. But no luck. We had plenty of ideas. Charlotte suggested a fashion magazine. Deb thought we could do an illustrated magazine that showed how to fix cars. They are good ideas, but we needed something really special to stand out. We were about to give up when something unexpected happened. Elena and Teresa came onto the balcony. They both go to the Academy di Musica in Rome and are part of the summer session. We started chatting. Pilar asked for directions to the library. And Sunny wanted to know where the parks were when the magazine came up. It turns out that Elena and Teresa were stuck on an idea, too, so we decided to join forces. We still don't know what the magazine will be about, but we do know that it will be special, because it will be the result of teamwork. Tomorrow we're having our first meeting. Can't wait. An invisible CLUE. It's incredible, Colette exclaimed. The longer we read the diary, the more I feel I have known these 5 mouselets. Forever. Her friends sighed. Each one of them could recognize themselves in the MOUSEFORD students from 40 years ago. And more than that, they knew that the mouselets in the diary shared a strong bond of friendship just like they did. The diary turned out to be full of surprises. Each time they read it, they learned something new. That afternoon. Hold on a second, Violet, Tanya said. Could you read the last sentence again? Violet repeated the sentence she had just read. I was thinking about the time capsule we buried last summer at MOUSEFORD. What's a time capsule? Tanya asked, puzzled. You don't know? Nikki asked. You put objects important to you in a BO, and then you seal it and hide it. Then when it's opened years later, it's like a window into the past. Everyone had the same thought at once. If Mer and her friends had created a time capsule 40 years ago, then it might still be hidden somewhere in MOUSEFORD. We have to find it. Ellie exclaimed, excited. Yes, but how? The diary doesn't say where the time capsule is hidden, Violet said, flipping through the pages. But I do see something unusual, a blank page, right in the middle of the book. Paulina's ears perked up. A blank page? Let me see. She took the book from Violet and sniffed it. The others watched her curiously. Aha, she cried, grinning. Just like I thought. Lemon! I think I've found a clue. Her friends looked at her, puzzled. It's an old form of secret writing, Paulina explained. You could write a secret message in invisible ink, and the receiver of the message would know what to do to make it visible. In this case, the invisible ink is just simple lemon juice. How does it work? Colette asked. You dip a paintbrush in lemon juice and then you write your message with the brush, like you would with a pen, Paulina explained. And then how do you read the message? Nikki asked. All you need is some heat, Paulina replied. It makes the writing appear. What are we waiting for? Pam asked. Let's give it a try. What will we use to warm it? Nikki asked. I know. Colette squeaked. I'll get my fur dryer. Be careful, Pam reminded her friends. We can't let the paper touch the fur dryer or it might burn, and that could be dangerous. She blew some warm air onto the paper. Slowly, the CLUE became visible right before their eyes. Clue to find the time capsule, go to the door with the green reptile, then look for the mouselet with the mysterious smile. Treasure hunt. The Gecko Club. Violet squeaked. There is a green gecko decoration on the door. You're right. Nikki cried. Let's go. They raced through the building and burst into the Gecko Club's clubhouse without even knocking. The rodents looked up from their poetry books, surprised. What are you doing here? Craig asked. Sorry for barging in, Paulina apologized. We are searching for a time capsule, and the first CLUE led us here. She showed them the secret message in the diary page. Now we just need to find a mouselet with a mysterious smile. Well, to be honest, the only mouselet allowed in our club is her, Ryder said, pointing to a painting on the wall. That portrait was in this room when we started the club. That looks like a mysterious smile to me, Colette said. She took the portrait off the wall and found the second clue taped to the back. Nikki read it out loud. Dig in the garden that has no rose, but first take a seat where the rosemary grows. The herb garden, Shin exclaimed. There are no roses planted there, but there are a lot of herbs. They all raced to the herb garden and searched for the rosemary. Paulina spotted it first. Here's the rosemary, she said, going to a green, spiky plant. The rhyme says to take a seat where the rosemary grows, Tanya said. And look! There's a bench right in front of it. The clue said we had to dig in the garden, Pam remembered. We should dig under the bench. I'll get a shovel, Ron cried. He ran to the garden shed and came back with one. Then they all took turns digging. They dug about a foot deep and didn't find anything. Then, clank! The shovel hit something hard. Violet carefully brushed the dirt aside and removed a faded tin box from the ground. Then she opened it up, revealing its precious contents. Ruby won't give up. The Thea sisters were happy that they had found the time capsule. But Ruby Flashy Fur was in a terrible mood. Her plan to end the poetry club had failed. The Mouselets had found a new clubhouse. And everybody on campus was talking about that silly time capsule. But what really upset Ruby was the scrap of paper that fell out of Alicia's notebook. The sky is blue when I miss you, Ruby read aloud. She frowned. Alicia, are you writing poetry? That's mine. Alicia snatched it back. Ruby put her paws on her hips. You're thinking of joining that silly club? Zoe answered for Alicia. What's wrong with that? It looks like fun. I think so, too, Connie chimed in. Are you serious? Ruby asked, narrowing her eyes at her friends. Of course, Connie replied. And, anyway, we can get extra credit from Professor Ratcliffe if we join the club. Ruby's whiskers twitched. Traitors, she cried. Then she crumpled up the poem, tossed it behind her, and stomped toward her dorm room. There had to be a way to stop the poetry club, and she vowed to find it. As she passed through the main garden, she heard a familiar voice. Vi, don't even joke about it, Colette was saying. She sounded so serious that Ruby stopped to listen. Maybe the conversation could be useful to her. But I have no right to belong to the club, Violet said sadly. That's not true, Colette said. But it is, Violet protested. I'm the only one who hasn't read a poem yet. Don't lose heart, Nikki told her. The inspiration will come to you. Violet decided it was time to tell her friends the truth. She took a deep breath. It's not the inspiration I need, she admitted. It's the courage. Colette hugged her. Oh, Violet. We'll help you overcome your shyness. That's right, Pamela agreed. The club wouldn't be the same without you. If you quit, we all quit. Ruby sneered as she heard those words. Really? Would the Thea sisters give up the club so easily? Then they must not care about it all that much, she said, and a wicked smile appeared on her face. I think I know 2 rodents who would be interested in that news. Concerned and worried. Dear Diary. The planning of the magazine is going really well. We finally decided to create a poetry magazine with poems by students from MOUSEFORD Academy and the Académie des Muses. This started out with great energy, but now I'm concerned that something's wrong. Elena and Teresa have been avoiding my friends and me, and I'm not sure why. Although I do have a clue, they started acting strange right after Priscilla Poshpaws invited them for tea in her suite. Could Priscilla have something to do with this? We're all getting together in an hour for a final meeting before our presentation. I hope we can figure things out. Until later, Mr. Ruby's recipe for trouble. Ruby loved making trouble for the Thea sisters, and she knew just how to threaten the poetry club. The conversation she just heard had given her an idea. With her plan in place, Ruby went to Ellie and Tanya's room right away. "Hi, Ruby," Tanya said with a smile. "Can I come in?" Ruby asked, making sure she had a serious look on her snout. "There's something I think you should know." Tanya and Ellie looked at her curiously as she stepped inside. "I think your friends are going to start a new poetry club without you," Ruby began. Tanya and Ellie looked at each other. "That can't be true," Ellie said. "I overheard them talking," Ruby said. Violet said that she wanted to drop out of the club, and the others said they would follow her. Tanya frowned. "Well, it's true that Violet hasn't read any of her poems yet." Ruby nodded. "And I know it was your idea, Tanya, for members of the club to read poems out loud. So I'm sure they'll form a new club where they can make their own rules." "And you really heard them say this?" Ellie asked. "I heard them talking, yes," Ruby replied slyly. She quickly left the room before they could ask any more questions. That night, when the Thea sisters got to their clubhouse for the meeting, Tanya and Ellie weren't there. Colette texted them, and she got this reply. "From Ellie, we're not coming today. You should have told us you didn't want us in the club." "What is she talking about?" Pam wondered. "That makes no sense." "This has to be a misunderstanding," Nikki said. "Let's go find them and clear this up." "I'll just put the diary back until later," Violet said. "Be right there." Her friends left to find Tanya and Ellie, and Violet went to return the diary to the high shelf where they had been storing it for safekeeping. She stood on the tips of her paws and reached up, but the book slipped from her paws. It fell down and landed open. When Violet picked it up, she started to read the page. Violet finished reading the diary just as her friends returned. The strength of friendship. Dear Diary. My sixth sense was correct. Elena and Teresa were avoiding us, and it was all because of that interfering Priscilla. Priscilla is used to getting everything she wants, and I think she realized that she might not win the magazine contest. A lot of the other students have been talking about how much they admire our idea for a poetry magazine. She must have thought we were her biggest competition, so she decided to sabotage us. How did she do it? She told Elena and Teresa a bunch of lies to try to break up our group. But we were not about to give up on Elena and Teresa. Charlotte, Sunny, Deb, Pilar, and I wrote them a letter and slid it under the door of their room. It was an invitation to meet us at the Trevi fountain, along with 2 coins. We waited anxiously at the fountain and were so happy to see them show up. Then I held up a coin of my own. There is a legend that if you throw a coin into the fountain over your left shoulder with your right paw, you will return to Rome. But I had another idea. "I want to make another wish," I said. "That our friendship with you will be stronger than any misunderstandings." Elena and Teresa smiled, and we started talking. Priscilla had lied and told them we didn't want to work on the magazine with them. But they believed us when we told them it wasn't true. Then everything went back to the way it was. All's well that ends well. Mr. Unfortunately, they had bad news. Ellie and Tanya weren't in their room or they're not answering the door, Nikki reported. But we ran into Shin. He heard Ruby tell them that we were going to form a poetry club without them, and they believed her. Violet looked at the diary and smiled. The pages she had just read had given her a great idea. "Don't worry, I know what to do," she said. "The Thea sisters never give up. The next morning, Ellie and Tanya found mysterious invitation under their door. A mysterious invitation. What's this? Ellie wondered, picking up the 2 notes from the floor. She handed one to Tanya. They're addressed to our poetry nicknames, Tanya said. Curious, the 2 mouselets went to the clubhouse that night. When they got there, the room was dim, with only the light of the electric candles flickering. Is anybody here? Tanya called out. The Thea sisters stepped out of the shadows. We're so glad you're here, Colette said. Please don't leave. We don't know what Ruby told you, but please give us a chance to clear things up, Paulina added. Nikki grabbed Ellie's and Tanya's paws. There is only one poetry club, and it has 7 members, she said. The club will only survive if we all stick together. So you don't want to make up your own club with its own rules? Tanya asked. We never said anything like that, Pam said. Violet was going to quit, and we rallied around her. It meant a lot to me, Violet said shyly. And so does this club. So I've thought of something we can do to symbolize our friendship. She reached into a bag and pulled out a pretty, green tin box. These are all the objects we brought to our first poetry meeting, she said. We can take them back now and end the club, if that's what everyone wants to do. I have an idea. Tanya and Ellie were silent, thinking. Or we can use these to make our own time capsule. Violet finished, and Tanya and Ellie both smiled. I'm sorry we believed Ruby, Ellie said. That was foolish of us, Tanya agreed. We will never doubt your friendship again, we promise. The 7 mouselets hugged each other, relieved that the misunderstanding was over. The time capsule idea is great, Ellie added. Where should we hide it? Why not hide it in the same place that we found the first time capsule? Colette asked. That would be a nice tribute to those MOUSEFORD students from 40 years ago. That's a fabumouse idea. Pam cheered, and everyone agreed. Do you have your invitations? Violet asked. I thought we could each tie a ribbon around the box. Tanya undid the yellow ribbon from her invite and tied it around the box. Ellie did the same with her blue ribbon. The Thea sisters each had a ribbon, too. That matched the color of their poetry notebooks. They tied their ribbons around the box, securing it. Perfect, said Violet. Now there's just one thing left to do. Bury it? Pam asked. Violet grinned. No. We should finish reading the diary first. I am so curious to find out who won the magazine contest. Her friends agreed, and they sat down on the big floor pillows, eager to hear the end of the story. I am so shy. Dear Diary. There are only a few days left until the end of the summer session, and Charlotte, Deb, Pilar, Sunny, and I have been making the most of them. Today we went to visit the enormous Vatican Museum, and then had lunch in the very lively Trastevere neighborhood. We ate an amazing, cremosa, the best cheese pie in Rome, cheese pie, and the friendly owner of the restaurant gave me the recipe. I can't wait to try it. We have not forgotten about our assignment. We added the finishing touches and our magazine is now ready to present and my friends want me to do it. The thing is I don't know if I can. I'm worried that my shyness will take over. Can you imagine? I would have to speak in front of hundreds of students. I am sure my paws will shake and I won't be able to utter a single word. What should I do? I'm so confused. Maybe I for a walk. Until later. Amor. Time to investigate. Please, please, please keep reading. Colette pleaded. We have to find out what M or decided. Pam urged. YESSSSS, the others squeaked. Violet turned the page and gasped. The rest of the pages are blank. The diary ends here, she announced. The mouselets looked at each other in shock. Does this mean that we will never know how the summer ended for our friends from the past? Ellie asked. Everyone thought for a moment. Paulina piped up first. I have an idea. We can look for MR, Pilar, Charlotte, Deb, and Sunny and invite them to MOUSEFORD for a reunion, she said. They can tell us the ending themselves. That would be mouserific, but how will find them? Colette asked. We can look through school records, Nikki suggested. And the internet should be helpful, too, Tanya said. This will be a big investigation, Paulina said. I think we might need more mice. They asked the Gecko Club to help, and the rodents agreed. They divided into teams. Ellie, Nikki, and Violet looked through the old records. Paulina, Tanya, and Shin searched the internet. Pam, Colette, Craig, and Ron decided to ask rodents around the island if they remembered the 5 mouselets. Let's start at the Cheese House Diner, Pam said. A lot of the island old-timers hang out there, and besides, I could go for a snack. Mitch Melter, the owner of the diner, welcomed them with a big smile. Hello there, he said. Did the wind carry the appetizing aroma of cheese fondue all the way to MOUSEFORD? Colette sniffed the air. We'll definitely order some, she said. But first, we have a question. We're trying to track down some students who went to MOUSEFORD Academy 40 years ago. 40 years ago? Mitch asked. That's before my time, but talk to Oscar over there. He's got a great memory. He pointed to an elderly fisher mouse reading a newspaper. The 4 students approached him and introduced themselves. Colette told him their story. Charlotte, Sunny, Pilar, and Deb? Oscar repeated. The name Sunny rings a bell. I remember a Sunny who was a great sailboat racer. That could be her. Pam said. The Sunny we read about is very athletic. Oscar stood up. Let's check the bulletin board. There are lots of photos of the old racing championships. They examined the photos, and sure enough, there was a photo of a mouselet named Sunny, holding a trophy. That photo is dated the same year as the diary. Colette said, her voice filled with excitement. And her first and last name is on the back, so we can contact her, Pam said. Ron gave Oscar a hug. Thanks. You really helped us. Just then the door to the diner opened, and their friends poured in. We just found Sunny's last name. Pam exclaimed when she saw them. And we found Charlotte's and Deb's last names. Nikki squeaked. Tanya held out a piece of paper. We even got Pilar's address. But we still have no clue who Mer is, Violet announced sadly. The mouselets were all quiet for a moment until Colette piped up. Let's not get discouraged, she said. We can ask Charlotte, Sunny, Deb, and Pilar to invite their mysterious friend to the reunion for us. That's perfect. Violet cried. What are we waiting for? Let's send those invitations. Let the reunion begin. The students quickly mailed out the invitations. Charlotte, Pilar, Deb, and Sunny replied right away, and they all seemed to be just as excited and cheerful as the mouselets described in the diary. The poetry club members got to work planning the reunion. When the day came, they were ready to welcome the guests of honor. Pam went to the dock to pick them up, while the others patiently waited, and waited, and waited. When the car appeared, they saw that Pam wasn't driving. An older mouselet with wavy brown hair was at the wheel. Dear mouselets. I can't wait to get back to MOUSEFORD. I already have the perfect dress for it. Best, Charlotte. I wouldn't miss it. Starting my engines now. Deb. A reunion? What a fabulous idea. See you soon. Sunny. Of course I accept. Can't wait to see the whole group. Pilar was the first out of the car. We're finally here, she said. Back at our beloved MOUSEFORD. Sorry we're late, Pam apologized as she helped the other 3 guests out of the backseat of the car. Deb insisted on driving. And of course she had to do it on the bumpiest road on the whole island, said a blonde rodent dressed in pink. The mouselets quickly guessed that she must be Charlotte. Charlotte's friends burst out laughing. It's like no time has passed at all, remarked Pilar, a mouse with a chic blonde haircut. It's so good to see everyone again, agreed Sunny, a gray rodent wearing a red score. The Thea sisters approached them. Welcome to MOUSEFORD. Violet squeaked. We're so happy you're here, but we're sorry Emmer didn't come, Colette said sadly. What do you mean? Pilar asked, confused. She told me she would be here. And here I am, a familiar voice exclaimed. Everyone turned to see Professor Ratcliffe standing there. Margaret! Charlotte, Deb, Pilar, and Sunny shouted all at once. Then they ran to hug their friend. The members of the Poets Club looked at one another, surprised. The mysterious writer of the diary, was Professor Margaret Ratcliffe. A happy reunion. Once they got over their surprise, the mouselets decided to invite Charlotte, Deb, Pilar, Sunny, and Margaret to a special meeting of the Poetry Club. You've really made this very cozy, Professor Ratcliffe remarked. Thank you for letting us use this room, Colette said, and then she handed her a wrapped package. This is for you. When Margaret opened it, she gasped. But this is our time capsule, she squeaked. Our time capsule? Sunny repeated, startled. Yes, Ellie replied, smiling. We found it, thanks to the clues written in the mysterious diary. Now it's time for us to give it back. The former students gathered around the box and looked through their mementos. Here's the wrench I used to fix my car. Deb exclaimed. I used this map so I wouldn't get lost in the school hallways, Pilar remembered, laughing. Charlotte smiled. This is the beret I wore on my first day at MOUSEFORD. And these were the lucky laces for my running shoes. Sunny added. Margaret picked up the Squeakspeare book. This book made me fall in love with poetry, she said with a sigh. Then Nikki asked the question they had all been wanting to ask. Excuse me, Professor, but we are so curious to know how your summer in Rome ended, Nikki said. Did you present your group's project? Yes, I did, she replied. Thanks to the support of my friends, I was able to overcome my shyness. Our magazine won first prize. Why didn't you write that in your diary? Violet asked. The professor looked at her and smiled. I realized that because of my shyness, I was only writing about an adventure instead of living it. Violet understood. At the meetings of the Poetry Club, she had been a spectator, staying on the sidelines because she was afraid she wasn't good enough. But right then she realized something: if young Margaret Ratcliffe could overcome her shyness, she could, too. Violet took a deep breath and faced her friends. She could see the love and support in their faces, and that gave her courage. I would love to read you one of my poems, Violet announced. Everyone clapped encouragingly. Violet took a deep breath and began to read. It was a poem about friendship, of course, because Violet had always known, with her friends behind her, she could do anything. Go, Vi! I'll read one of my poems.